The 2026 World Cup final wrapped up just last night. But instead of celebrating a newly crowned champion, the internet quickly turned into a massive courtroom for Argentina and Lionel Messi. Within hours, social media was flooded with thousands of memes, satire, and jab-filled posts. The hashtag VARgentina trended once again. Clip after clip of controversial calls were replayed millions of times, while Lionel Messi remained at the absolute center of the storm. Across multiple platforms, football fans, including many who previously claimed to be neutral, posted videos and comments hailing Spain as the saviors of football. Meanwhile, media outlets and football communities began revisiting the entire trail of controversies that trailed Argentina from the group stage onward. This is no longer just a debate about a single match. It's a question about the entire tournament. How did a team stacked with world-class talent become the most hated squad at the 2026 World Cup? Why was every step Argentina took met with accusations of favoritism, questionable VAR decisions, and a wave of outrage that only grew louder from one game to the next? And how did Lionel Messi, revered for over a decade as one of the greatest to ever grace the game, suddenly become the face of the biggest scandal this tournament has ever seen? Hey Tracers, Sean here. Did you guys catch the 2026 World Cup final last night? No matter who you were rooting for, this tournament was clearly about way more than just who walked away with the trophy. Just hours after the final whistle, the internet blew up with debate from sketchy VAR calls and allegations of a red carpet treatment for Argentina to fan clashes and political drama on the pitch. To some, it was just the wild nature of the game, but to others, it called the entire integrity of the tournament into question. Before we tear this all down piece by piece, if you want to support Trace Zero so we can keep bringing you deeper, long-form investigations, consider joining Trace Circle. You'll get exclusive stickers featuring my face to use in the live chats and comment sections. I'll see you there. Tonight, we're not here to judge who's right or wrong. We're here to trace how these controversies stacked up, creating a tidal wave of backlash that forever changed how the world looks at Argentina and Lionel Messi at the 2026 World Cup. Because you never know how deep this hole goes. The 11th of June, 2026. On paper, Argentina's opening match should have been routine. As defending champions, they arrived carrying sky-high expectations. Lionel Messi was once again the center of the universe, with millions watching and expecting just one thing: a smooth, easy win to kick off their campaign. But the moment the final whistle blew, the narrative took a sharp left turn. People weren't talking about the scoreline. They were fixated on a string of calls on the pitch that sparked instant, heated debate. Replay clips went wild across social media. Every single angle was dissected, and every whistle was put under a microscope. At the time, nobody realized that this minor debate was actually the starting line for the biggest story of the entire tournament. At first, most people wrote it off as standard controversy. I mean, doesn't every World Cup leave behind its share of drama? But the tension ratcheted up when Argentina faced Algeria. One of the defining moments came when Lionel Messi caught the leg of Algeria's captain, Aissa Mandi. Within minutes, clips of the tackle spread like wildfire online. And everyone had the exact same question: how did a challenge that reckless get away without a single card? Things escalated when the Algerian Football Federation filed an official complaint with FIFA regarding the officiating in that match. To Algerian fans, this incident was concrete proof of the unfairness they experienced out on the pitch. Meanwhile, the Argentine camp insisted the referee's decision fell well within a reasonable interpretation of the laws. Was it purely coincidental? Nobody could say for sure. But one thing was clear: the debate didn't end when the game did. Within hours, the internet was flooded with video compilations, breakdown clips, and side-by-side posts comparing VAR standards in Argentina's match to the rest of the tournament. Amidst this wave of growing skepticism, one specific hashtag began popping up everywhere across timelines. Hashtag VARgentina. At first, it was just used by a handful of social media accounts. But as more calls came into question, the hashtag rapidly gained traction in public discourse. Sports outlets, content creators, and even former pros began chiming in. The narrative shifted. It was no longer just about a single match, but about a much bigger question. Was a clear pattern starting to form along Argentina's path? From that moment on, Argentina's run wasn't just measured by the goals they scored. Every whistle, every call was suddenly under intense public scrutiny. No one knew for sure where this story was headed. But their very next match made these theories almost impossible to ignore. Up next was Egypt. And that was the game where the VAR conspiracy allegations completely exploded, this time under the global glare of international media. If the match against Algeria raised a few eyebrows, their clash with Egypt turned those doubts into full-blown global headlines. The game was tense and fierce right from the opening whistle, with both sides trading attacks and creating chances. But the atmosphere boiled over when a sequence of refereeing calls, including key VAR interventions, sparked furious protests from the Egyptian camp. To Egypt's players, those pivotal decisions derailed their momentum and ultimately decided the outcome. And to the millions watching at home, a brand new wave of controversy had officially begun. At this point, eyes weren't just glued to the scoreboard anymore. They were dialed in on every whistle blow and every gesture from the referee. Within minutes of the final whistle, match clips flooded the internet. One side pointed out bizarre calls that clearly worked against Egypt. Meanwhile, others pushed back, insisting every decision stayed strictly within the laws of the game. International sports outlets suddenly jumped all over the story. Former stars, tactical analysts, and retired refs joined the conversation to weigh in on the fallout. The story had spiraled far beyond stats and final scores. The louder the public noise got, the heavier the pressure weighed on Argentina. With every step forward, across social media, hashtag VARgentina was trending all over again. Long-form video breakdowns, compilation clips, and satirical memes were being churned out constantly. For critics, the Egypt match practically confirmed the suspicions that had been building since the previous game. On the flip side, Argentine supporters felt their team was being scapegoated and unfairly targeted every single time they secured a win. This was no longer just about 90 minutes on the pitch. It was an outright crisis of public trust in the integrity of the tournament itself. The further Argentina advanced, the bigger the shadow of doubt trailing right behind them became. But little did anyone know, the controversy hadn't even peaked yet. In the next round, Switzerland was waiting for them, a match that would unleash another fiery debate, making it even harder for the public to separate Argentina's raw skill on the pitch from the cloud of refereeing controversy following them into the semifinals. After surviving the drama against Algeria and Egypt, Argentina moved on to the quarterfinals to face Switzerland. For football fans around the world, this was no longer just another match. Not simply because the opposition was getting tougher, but because, for the first time, millions were tuning in with the exact same cynical question in mind. Is this game going to be riddled with controversial calls again? The pressure resting on the match officials' shoulders shot through the roof. Every single whistle was guaranteed to be judged by a global jury. Now, eyes weren't just watching Argentina's every move. The referee, the linesman, and the VAR room were once again put on trial on the world stage. The tension flared up on the pitch from the very first minute. Switzerland played with disciplined structure, creating a few dangerous moments, while Argentina tried to control the tempo. But the spark finally blew up when a crucial decision by the referee triggered chaotic protests from the Swiss bench and players. They immediately swarmed the referee, demanding answers. Within seconds, clips of the incident swept across social media. the public split instantly. Some argued it was a textbook foul, while others were convinced Switzerland had just been robbed in broad daylight. Doubts that used to just echo in internet forums had now officially become the main talking point in sports TV studios worldwide. Things got even hotter, and not just because of what happened during those 90 minutes on the grass. It was the fallout after the final whistle. Sports analysis shows broke down the decision frame by frame. The hashtag VARgentina erupted yet again, accompanied by increasingly damning accusations. To Argentine fans, this wave of backlash was nothing more than pure hatred and baseless claims. But to critics, the sheer consistency of these incidents match after match only confirmed what they already believed, that Argentina's run in this tournament was being guided by an invisible hand. At this point, the controversy was no longer just a lingering shadow. It had become the defining identity of the 2026 World Cup, regardless of the storm. Argentina pushed through to the semifinals, and this is where the stage completely shifted. Their next match pitted them against their eternal rivals, England. A fixture carrying historical scars, political rivalries, and the raw emotions of millions onto a single pitch. And the controversy that followed was no longer confined to the stadium. It began bleeding far beyond the boundaries of the pitch. As the tournament progressed, the spotlight on Argentina wasn't just coming from refereeing calls or VAR replays on the pitch anymore. Public attention began shifting to the stands, social media, and a series of off-pitch incidents that were starting to shape the team's entire image at the 2026 World Cup. One of the most talked about moments happened during their match against Egypt. Videos circulating online showed a group of Argentine fans waving an Israeli flag near Egyptian supporters, many of whom were openly showing solidarity with Palestine. Shortly after, footage surfaced showing fans throwing alcoholic drinks toward the Egyptian stands. To many, this was no longer just standard stadium banter. It sparked intense debate for crossing into politics, identity, and religious sensitivities issues that go far beyond football. This was the turning point, where the debate surrounding Argentina spilled out of the stadium. Controversy after controversy kept piling up. Heading into the semifinal against England, social media was once again flooded with footage of supporters burning an English flag. At the same time, toxic posts containing racial slurs and hate speech aimed at opposing players and fans spread across various platforms. While some posts were taken down, others kept circulating, drawing widespread backlash. Even if these were isolated acts by a few bad actors, they heavily influenced how the global public viewed Argentina throughout the tournament. For neutral fans, discussing Argentina was no longer just about tactics and performance on the pitch. Slowly but surely, the scrutiny on Argentina evolved into something way bigger than football itself. International media began picking up on how these controversies were stacking up one after another. On one side, Argentine supporters felt their team was being unfairly vilified every time they won. They argued that many of these incidents were blown out of proportion and taken out of context. But on the flip side, critics saw a clear pattern. To them, questionable calls on the field, rowdy behavior in the stands, and rising toxicity online formed a chain of events that was simply impossible to ignore. And this divide in perception made finding any middle ground almost impossible. And while that debate was far from settling down, Argentina was just one step away from the final. The semi-final against England had finally arrived. But this match carried a weight far greater than just a spot in the championship game. Historical rivalries, deep-seated wounds between two nations, and an atmosphere that had reached a boiling point before a single ball was even kicked. What went down that night would become one of the most controversial chapters in Argentina's 2026 World Cup run. The 15th of July, 2026, Atlanta suddenly became a boiling stage for the semifinal. 44 years after the outbreak of the Falklands War, or Las Malvinas to the Argentine people, that political hostility resurfaced once again. Outside the stadium, footage of a small group of supporters burning an English flag circulated online, proving that these 90 minutes were about far more than just a ticket to the grand final. When kickoff finally came, the atmosphere on the pitch felt infinitely heavier than your average semifinal. The game was brutal and heavily physical. Fierce battles broke out over every single inch of grass. England drew first blood, putting Argentina right on the brink of elimination. But as time ran out, champion mentality took over. An equalizer completely shifted the momentum. Then, in injury time, the drama reached its absolute peak. Lautaro Martinez netted the winning goal off a pinpoint pass from Lionel Messi. Argentina pulled off a dramatic 2-1 victory, securing their spot in the grand final. But instead of a pure celebration, a brand new, far larger controversy had only just begun. What should have been a night of euphoria quickly became the spark for a whole new wave of global outrage. Right in the middle of the pitch celebrations, several Argentine players unfurled a provocative banner reading, "Las Malvinas son Argentinas." To the people of Argentina, this display was a bold statement reasserting their national sovereignty. But to the British public and football authorities, it was seen as an overt political stunt that tarnished the integrity of the World Cup stage. Photos of the banner spread like wildfire through international news outlets. Reuters even reported widespread demands for FIFA to launch an official investigation, given strict FIFA regulations that firmly prohibit any political statements inside the stadium. The flames erupted once more. This time, the conversation was no longer about VAR calls or refereeing decisions. It was about the blurry line where sport meets politics. As Argentina officially stamped their ticket to the final, they dragged a whole new storm of controversy along with them to the biggest stage on earth. Now, only one final obstacle remained. Waiting for them at the finish line was Spain, and nobody could have guessed that this final would close Argentina's journey in a way that defied all logic. Not just because of the final scoreline, but because of the absolute chaos that erupted the second the final whistle blew. Social media exploded, cruel memes flooded timelines, clashes broke out on the pitch. And for the first time all tournament, the narrative surrounding Argentina reached its ultimate climax. The 19th of July, 2026, to MetLife Stadium. One match remaining. 90 minutes to decide it all. Would Argentina defend their global crown, or would Spain tear down the reigning champion's dominance once and for all? Unlike the chaotic battles that came before, this grand final unfolded in a far more pragmatic, calculated fashion. Spain dominated possession. Argentina held a compact defense, waiting patiently for a single sliver of space to strike on a lethal counterattack. Chance after chance flared up at both ends. But as the 90 minutes of regulation time expired, the scoreboard remained locked. The final was dragged into extra time. And just as exhaustion set in, one pivotal moment suddenly rewrote history. The 106th minute. A loose ball rolled freely inside the penalty box. Ferran Torres reacted faster than anyone else. A blistering left-footed strike buried the ball past Emiliano Martinez. Spain took the lead. Argentina fought tooth and nail to respond, but their hopes were buried deep in injury time when Enzo Fernandez was shown a second yellow card for a reckless challenge. The defending champions were left chasing the game down to 10 men. Moments later, the final whistle blew. Argentina had officially lost their World Cup crown, but instead of cooling things down, that final whistle sparked the worst explosion of controversy the tournament had seen yet. As the Spanish squad rushed the field to celebrate their title, the atmosphere instantly turned hostile. Leandro Paredes was spotted shoving Gavi to the ground. Within seconds, players from both sides were chest to chest as pushing and shoving broke out amidst the championship stage. Argentine manager Lionel Scaloni even had to step in to pull his players back before the clash spiraled into an all-out brawl. Clips of the scuffle immediately went viral across the globe. The world's focus shattered instantly. People weren't just talking about the game, but about how ugly the final moments turned out to be. At the exact same time, outside the stadium, the internet completely exploded. In a matter of minutes, timelines were overwhelmed with memes, tactical breakdowns, and millions of reactions from every corner of the globe. Amidst the roaring noise online, one single phrase suddenly echoed louder than the rest. Spain saved football. This line didn't come from an official FIFA press release or a mainstream news analysis. It was a raw outburst from a wave of fans who felt Spain had saved the soul of football by putting an end to an Argentine run that had been at the epicenter of suspicion all tournament long. On the other hand, Argentine fans stood firmly behind their squad, dismissing the entire backlash as pure bitterness and hate. The debate reached a fever pitch. And just like it had been since the knockout rounds began, the footballing world was split right down the middle once again. In the end, the 2026 World Cup won't just be remembered for Spain lifting the trophy, but because this tournament left behind one of the most heated, iconic legacies of debate in modern sports history. That anger even spilled far beyond screen displays. In Argentina's capital, Buenos Aires, thousands of frustrated fans poured into the streets right after the match. What should have been a celebration quickly dissolved into mass clashes with police, property destruction, and rioting on their own home soil. An ironic climax. While the rest of the world celebrated their downfall, the streets of Buenos Aires were burning with their own rage. The 2026 World Cup may be over, but the debate and the scars it left behind are far from settling down. Several international media outlets have even run reports highlighting how Lionel Messi suddenly became one of the most hated and villainized figures in modern sports history at the twilight of his career. To some, Argentina was a team plagued by scandal. To others, they were simply victims of a wild public narrative. Whatever perspective you hold, one thing is undeniable. This tournament left a mark that won't ever be erased. But what about you guys, Tracers? Do you think Argentina truly benefited from a scripted run, or were they just victims of a global hate narrative? Drop your thoughts down in the comments. Congratulations to Spain, you guys were incredible. And if you're still watching this, maybe you're looking for the same thing I am.